It started with a conversation so quiet that even seasoned palace aides pretended not to hear it. Behind closed doors, far from the cameras and ceremonial smiles, King Charles made a decision that would send shockwaves through the royal household. By the time whispers reached the palace corridors, one thing was already clear: Queen Camilla was furious. And the person at the center of it all was Catherine. But before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, the meeting seemed routine. The palace had seen countless private discussions over the years, many of them involving sensitive matters that never reached public attention. But this gathering felt different from the beginning. The names attached to it were unusual. King Charles was present. Catherine was there. Several senior royal advisors were reportedly called in. Even more telling was what happened afterward. No official explanation emerged. No carefully prepared briefing followed. Instead, silence settled over the palace like a heavy curtain, and in royal circles, silence often speaks louder than any announcement ever could. Within days, reports began circulating that activity surrounding the management of key royal estates had increased dramatically. Administrative offices that normally operated with quiet predictability suddenly became unusually busy. Documents were reportedly reviewed, schedules shifted, meetings multiplied. Staff members who had spent years working within the same routines noticed subtle but undeniable changes. Nobody was willing to speak openly, yet many appeared to understand that something significant was unfolding behind the scenes. According to growing reports, King Charles had been spending considerable time reviewing long-term plans connected to the future of the monarchy. His ongoing health concerns had inevitably raised questions about succession, stability, and legacy. While public appearances continued and official duties remained in motion, insiders suggested that deeper conversations were taking place behind closed doors. The future could no longer be treated as a distant concern. Preparations had to begin now. Decisions that might once have been postponed were suddenly becoming urgent, and at the center of those discussions stood Catherine. For years, she had carefully built a reputation defined by patience, discipline, and loyalty to the institution. Unlike others who found themselves caught in royal controversies, Catherine rarely appeared driven by personal ambition. She worked quietly. She followed protocol. She earned trust. Those qualities, according to several royal observers, may have become increasingly important as Charles evaluated who could be relied upon to safeguard the monarchy's future. Then came the whispers that truly changed everything. Sources began claiming that Catherine had quietly been entrusted with new responsibilities connected to the private holdings of the late Queen Elizabeth II. Not ceremonial duties, not symbolic gestures. Real responsibilities. The kind that carried influence behind palace walls. The kind that signaled confidence from the highest levels of the royal household. If true, it represented far more than a routine administrative adjustment. It suggested that Charles was actively shaping the next chapter of royal leadership. What made the situation even more explosive was the timing. Reports indicate that key administrative changes were already underway before Queen Camilla fully understood the scope of what was happening. If those reports are accurate, the discovery came not through consultation but through realization. One day, the existing structure appeared intact. The next, responsibilities that carried significant weight seemed to be moving toward Catherine's sphere of influence. That alone was enough to fuel intense speculation throughout palace circles. Soon, courtiers began describing an atmosphere of growing tension. Conversations became cautious. Rumors multiplied. Every minor adjustment was scrutinized for hidden meaning. Some believed the changes were practical preparations for the future. Others viewed them as a powerful statement about trust. And that distinction mattered because this was never simply about estates, property, or administration. Those issues were merely the surface. Beneath them lay something far more important: influence, confidence, and the question of who would help guide the monarchy through one of the most uncertain periods in its modern history. As whispers continued spreading through palace offices and royal residences, the story evolved into something much larger than anyone had initially imagined. What started as a quiet meeting was rapidly becoming a defining moment in an ongoing struggle over legacy itself. And with every passing day, one question grew more impossible to ignore. Why had Charles chosen Catherine for such an important role, and what exactly was so valuable that it could trigger this level of tension within the royal household? But the real significance of Charles's decision could only be understood by examining the extraordinary estate at the center of the growing royal storm. For decades, the late Queen Elizabeth carefully protected a collection of private estates, assets, and responsibilities that few people fully understood. They were not simply properties. They were symbols of continuity, duty, and royal stewardship. And now, according to growing reports, Catherine had been quietly brought into that sacred circle. To understand why Charles's reported decision created such intense reactions behind palace walls, it is necessary to look beyond headlines and royal titles. The story was never simply about land, wealth, or ownership. It was about something far more powerful. Throughout her historic reign, Queen Elizabeth II treated certain private holdings as an extension of her lifelong commitment to the crown. They represented stability during moments of uncertainty, continuity during periods of change, and a direct connection between past generations and those still to come. While the public often focused on ceremonies, state occasions, and official residences, some of the most important elements of royal influence existed quietly in the background, carefully protected and rarely discussed. Those close to royal affairs have long suggested that Elizabeth viewed these responsibilities differently from ordinary assets. They were not prizes to be distributed. They were obligations to be preserved. The distinction mattered. Crown property belonged to the institution itself, tied to the duties of the monarchy, and managed through established structures. Private holdings, however, carried a more personal dimension. They reflected trust, judgment, and stewardship. Whoever became involved with those responsibilities was not simply receiving access. They were being entrusted with a legacy that stretched across generations. That is why recent reports surrounding Catherine have attracted so much attention. According to royal insiders, the responsibilities reportedly being placed in her hands are connected to a tradition that Queen Elizabeth guarded carefully throughout her reign. For decades, she maintained strict control over who was brought into those discussions and who remained outside them. Trust was earned slowly. Loyalty was observed over time. Patience mattered. Discretion mattered even more. In a family often subjected to relentless scrutiny, Elizabeth understood the value of individuals who could be relied upon when pressure intensified. Many observers now believe those qualities explain why Catherine's name has emerged so prominently in recent reports. Her rise within the royal family was never built upon dramatic declarations or public demands. Instead, it was defined by consistency. Year after year, she embraced responsibilities without creating unnecessary controversy. She navigated difficult periods with restraint. She earned respect from palace staff, senior advisors, and much of the public. That reputation gradually transformed into something increasingly valuable: trust. According to several royal commentators, Queen Elizabeth reportedly recognized those qualities long before recent developments began making headlines. While details remain closely guarded, there has been growing speculation that the late monarch spent years considering how future generations would protect the traditions she spent a lifetime defending. The challenge was never simply finding someone capable of carrying responsibility. The challenge was finding someone willing to place duty above personal ambition. As Charles reportedly continued reviewing long-term plans for the monarchy's future, that question became even more urgent. His ongoing health concerns inevitably forced difficult conversations about preparation, succession, and continuity. Royal insiders claim he increasingly believed the next generation could no longer remain on the sidelines waiting for responsibilities to arrive. Someday, the transition had to begin while experience and guidance were still available. Waiting too long carried risks. Acting too early carried consequences. Yet according to those reports, Charles ultimately concluded that the future demanded action. That conclusion appears to have elevated Catherine's importance within royal planning. Every new report seemed to reinforce the same message. She was no longer being viewed solely as a future queen. She was increasingly being viewed as a guardian of traditions that stretched far beyond any single reign. And as that perception grew stronger, so did the questions surrounding it. Why now? Why Catherine? Why had Charles reportedly chosen this moment to place such significant confidence in her? Those questions spread rapidly through royal circles because everyone understood their implications. If Catherine was indeed being welcomed into one of the monarchy's most trusted spheres, the decision carried meaning far beyond administration. It represented influence. It represented confidence. Most importantly, it represented a glimpse into how Charles may envision the future of the institution itself. And as whispers continued spreading through palace corridors, one unavoidable question began hanging over every conversation, every rumor, and every growing sign of change. As Catherine's influence appeared to grow, many inside the palace began asking the same question: How would Camilla react when she realized what was happening? Those closest to the royal household say the atmosphere changed almost overnight. Meetings became colder, conversations became shorter, and behind the scenes, whispers suggested that Queen Camilla was struggling to hide her disappointment. As Catherine's position strengthened, what had begun as quiet speculation was now evolving into something far more noticeable. The questions surrounding Catherine's growing responsibilities were no longer confined to a handful of palace insiders. They had spread throughout royal circles, creating an undercurrent of tension that seemed impossible to ignore. No public statements were made. No official disagreements surfaced. Yet according to those familiar with the mood inside the household, something had undeniably shifted. The sense of certainty that once surrounded established relationships appeared to be giving way to uncertainty, caution, and quiet calculation. At the heart of the growing speculation was a belief, held by many observers, that different groups within the royal household had begun viewing the future through very different lenses. For years, the monarchy had operated through a delicate balance of personalities, traditions, and competing priorities. That balance was never as simple as it appeared from the outside. Influence often flowed through trust rather than titles. Access frequently mattered more than rank. And in recent months, according to reports, the distribution of that influence appeared to be changing. Courtiers reportedly began discussing whether Queen Camilla had expected a larger role in matters connected to the future stewardship of key royal responsibilities. While such claims remain firmly within the realm of speculation, they gained momentum as more reports emerged linking Catherine to areas of growing importance. What made those whispers especially significant was the timing. These developments were unfolding during a period when questions about succession, continuity, and long-term planning were becoming increasingly urgent. Every adjustment seemed to carry deeper meaning. Every decision appeared connected to a larger strategy. Meanwhile, reports suggested that certain administrative responsibilities were gradually moving closer to Catherine's sphere of influence. On the surface, many of these changes appeared routine. Royal institutions constantly evolve, responsibilities shift, teams adapt. Yet inserts claimed these adjustments felt different because they seemed connected to a broader pattern. One responsibility led to another, one meeting led to another. Piece by piece, Catherine's role appeared to expand in ways that many had not anticipated only a short time earlier. As those reports circulated, concern reportedly began growing among individuals seen as loyal to Camilla's interests. Again, no public confrontation emerged. The monarchy rarely operates through dramatic declarations. Its most important battles are often fought quietly, through relationships, access, and confidence. Yet palace observers described an atmosphere in which uncertainty was becoming increasingly difficult to hide. Some wondered whether Catherine's rise signaled a changing balance of influence. Others questioned whether the developments reflected Charles's broader vision for the monarchy's future. Regardless of interpretation, the conversations themselves revealed how much was potentially at stake. What made the situation particularly sensitive was that discussions about responsibility quickly evolved into discussions about legacy. Legacy has always carried extraordinary weight within the royal family. It is not simply about who holds authority today. It is about who shapes the institution tomorrow. As reports linked Catherine more closely to long-term planning, many began viewing her role through that larger lens. She was no longer being discussed solely as the future queen. Increasingly, she was being discussed as someone entrusted with helping to define what the monarchy would become in the decades ahead. Throughout this period, Catherine maintained the same approach that had characterized much of her royal life. She remained publicly silent. No response was offered to the growing speculation. No attempt was made to address the rumors directly. That silence only intensified public fascination. In the absence of explanations, interpretations multiplied. Some viewed her restraint as evidence of discipline. Others saw it as confidence. Whatever the truth, her refusal to engage allowed the mystery surrounding these developments to grow even larger. As the weeks passed, the conversation inside royal circles gradually transformed into something much more significant than a debate over responsibilities. The emerging divide seemed to symbolize two competing visions of the monarchy itself. One vision focused on continuity, preparation, and gradual transition toward the next generation. The other appeared rooted in preserving existing influence within the current structure. Whether those interpretations were fair or not, they increasingly shaped how observers understood the unfolding situation. And that was precisely why the tension continued to escalate. What seemed like a quiet internal adjustment was becoming a larger struggle over trust, authority, and the future direction of the institution. The deeper people looked, the more complicated the story became. Beneath the administrative changes, beneath the whispers and rumors, another battle appeared to be taking shape, one that could redefine relationships at the highest levels of the royal household. Yet what appeared to be a simple disagreement over responsibilities would soon reveal a far deeper struggle for influence inside the House of Windsor. King Charles had spent years balancing competing loyalties. But according to insiders, he finally reached a conclusion that surprised even experienced royal observers. The future, he believed, required preparation, and preparation required trust. By the time the growing tension surrounding Catherine's expanding role reached wider royal circles, many observers had already begun focusing on a deeper question. What was driving King Charles to make these decisions now? For years, he had been known as someone who carefully weighed competing interests, often choosing patience over confrontation. Yet recent reports suggested a different reality was unfolding behind palace walls. Faced with mounting responsibilities and the undeniable pressures of an uncertain future, Charles appeared increasingly determined to ensure that the institution he would one day leave behind remained strong, stable, and prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. According to royal insiders, that process reportedly intensified as ongoing health concerns forced difficult conversations about long-term planning. While Charles continued carrying out his duties, those closest to the monarchy understood that preparation could no longer be treated as a distant concern. The future was approaching faster than anyone wished to admit. Questions that once seemed theoretical suddenly became immediate. Who would shoulder greater responsibility? Who could be trusted with sensitive matters? And who possessed the temperament required to guide the institution through the next era? Reports suggest that senior advisors encouraged a gradual transfer of responsibilities rather than a sudden transition. The reasoning was simple. Stability is rarely achieved through dramatic change. It is built through careful preparation, experience, and trust earned over time. According to those accounts, Charles increasingly embraced that philosophy. Rather than waiting for circumstances to force decisions upon the monarchy, he reportedly began laying the groundwork well in advance. Every adjustment served a purpose. Every responsibility carried a message. And increasingly, those messages seemed to point toward Catherine. For years, Catherine had cultivated a reputation that few within the royal household could match. She was widely viewed as disciplined, dependable, and remarkably consistent under pressure. While others often found themselves surrounded by controversy or speculation, Catherine remained focused on her role and responsibilities. Palace staff reportedly respected her professionalism. Advisors appreciated her discretion. Public support remained strong. Those qualities gradually transformed her into something more than a popular royal figure. They positioned her as a stabilizing presence during a period of growing uncertainty. That perception appears to have played a significant role in Charles's thinking. According to various reports, new oversight arrangements connected to important estate matters allegedly placed Catherine closer to discussions and decisions that carried substantial long-term significance. While many details remain unconfirmed, the symbolism alone attracted enormous attention. Responsibilities once associated with a smaller circle of trusted figures now appeared to be expanding toward the next generation. To some observers, it looked like preparation. To others, it looked like succession planning unfolding in real time. The implications were impossible to ignore. Every new report seemed to reinforce a broader narrative emerging within royal circles. Charles was not merely managing present-day affairs. He was shaping the future leadership structure of the monarchy itself. His actions were increasingly interpreted as signals about where his confidence lay and how he envisioned the institution evolving in the years ahead. Whether intentional or not, those signals carried tremendous weight. At the same time, confidence in William and Catherine's team appeared to be growing. Royal commentators frequently pointed to their ability to navigate challenges without generating constant turmoil. Their approach emphasized consistency, stability, and long-term planning. As public support remained strong, many observers began viewing them as the natural center of the monarchy's future. That growing perception only amplified the significance of every reported responsibility placed in Catherine's hands. Yet every shift in influence creates consequences elsewhere. According to palace insiders, supporters of Camilla increasingly viewed these developments with concern. What some saw as sensible preparation, others reportedly interpreted as a loss of influence. The more Catherine's role expanded, the more speculation intensified about what that expansion might mean for existing power dynamics within the royal household. Frustration reportedly grew, questions multiplied, and the divide that had once existed only in whispers seemed to become more visible with every passing week. What made the situation especially dramatic was that nobody appeared willing to address it openly. The monarchy thrives on unity, continuity, and public stability. Open disagreements are rarely acknowledged, yet beneath the surface, observers sensed mounting pressure. The future Charles was attempting to prepare for appeared increasingly tied to decisions that not everyone welcomed. And as those decisions continued reshaping relationships within the institution, the consequences were becoming harder to contain. Because while Charles may have believed he was safeguarding the monarchy's future through careful preparation and trusted stewardship, the reactions unfolding around him suggested a different story was beginning to emerge. A story filled with competing ambitions, wounded expectations, and growing uncertainty about where influence truly resided. And as those tensions deepened, the royal household found itself moving toward a moment that could no longer be quietly managed behind closed doors. But while Charles focused on safeguarding the institution, the reaction unfolding behind palace walls threatened to become impossible to ignore. Every royal household develops factions. Some remain invisible for years. Others emerge only when power begins to shift. As word of Catherine's expanded role spread through royal circles, long-standing loyalties were suddenly put to the test. What had once existed as quiet speculation was now becoming something far more difficult to contain. The reported changes surrounding Catherine's responsibilities were no longer viewed as isolated developments. They were being interpreted as part of a larger transformation taking place within the monarchy itself. And whenever transformation begins, people naturally start choosing sides, not publicly, not officially, but through conversations, private opinions, and subtle expressions of support. According to those familiar with the atmosphere inside royal circles, the institution was entering one of those rare moments when existing relationships were being quietly re-examined. Palace staff, advisors, and longtime observers reportedly found themselves looking at the same developments through very different perspectives. Some believed the reported shift toward Catherine represented exactly what the monarchy needed. They viewed it as a continuation of the careful preparation Charles had reportedly been pursuing for months. To them, placing greater trust in Catherine reflected stability rather than disruption. It suggested that the future was being approached thoughtfully rather than reactively. These supporters pointed to Catherine's reputation for discipline, consistency, and restraint as evidence that she was uniquely positioned to help guide the institution through an uncertain period. Others, however, viewed the situation differently. According to palace insiders, some individuals closely aligned with Camilla's interests reportedly questioned both the speed and the scale of the changes being discussed. Their concerns were not necessarily about Catherine herself. Instead, they centered on what these developments might ultimately represent. If responsibilities were indeed shifting, where would that process end? What influence would remain unchanged? And who would emerge stronger once the transition was complete? Those questions fueled a growing sense of unease among people who believed the balance within the royal household was evolving more rapidly than expected. As competing interpretations spread, the media began paying closer attention. Every rumor generated new speculation. Every anonymous source produced fresh theories. Stories circulated through newspapers, television discussions, and online commentary. Some reports emphasized preparation and continuity. Others focused on alleged tensions and rivalries. The result was a constant stream of competing narratives, each attempting to explain what was truly happening behind palace walls. With every passing week, public curiosity intensified. What made the situation particularly fascinating was that the discussion extended far beyond personalities. Interest began growing around the future management of royal assets, estates, and responsibilities that most people rarely considered. Suddenly, matters that had once remained hidden within palace administration became topics of public debate. Observers wanted to understand who would oversee important decisions in the years ahead. They wanted to know how the next generation would shape the institution. Most importantly, they wanted clues about the future direction of the monarchy itself. Throughout this period, Prince William remained a significant yet carefully measured presence in the background of the story. Reports consistently suggested that he remained closely involved in long-term planning discussions. Yet he avoided public comment and offered no direct response to the growing speculation. That silence only strengthened perceptions that a deliberate strategy was unfolding. Many observers interpreted William's restraint as evidence of confidence. Others saw it as proof that larger plans were being protected from public scrutiny. Whatever the reality, his refusal to engage publicly ensured that attention remained focused on the decisions themselves rather than the personalities involved. As tensions continued to build, the reported divide inside royal circles gradually transformed into something much larger than a disagreement over responsibilities or influence. Increasingly, people began viewing the situation as a reflection of two competing visions for the monarchy's future. One vision emphasized gradual transition, institutional stability, and preparation for the next era. The other appeared focused on preserving existing relationships and maintaining familiar structures. Whether those characterizations were entirely fair or not, they shaped how the unfolding story was understood. That shift in perception carried enormous significance because it raised questions that extended far beyond the present moment. The discussion was no longer simply about Catherine. It was no longer simply about Camilla. It had become a conversation about succession, legacy, and the future identity of the House of Windsor itself. Every reported decision seemed connected to that broader struggle. Every new development appeared to reveal another piece of a much larger puzzle. And yet, despite all the speculation, uncertainty remained. Many of the most important questions still lacked clear answers. The true intentions behind Charles's reported actions were still being debated. The long-term consequences remained impossible to measure. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Whatever had begun with a private meeting was evolving into a defining moment for the monarchy's future, and the most important revelation had not yet emerged. Yet the most revealing moment was still to come, because the final implications of Charles's decision extended far beyond the present crisis. For years, Catherine carefully avoided appearing ambitious. That strategy helped earn trust at every level of the institution. Now, according to reports, that patience was beginning to pay off in ways few could have predicted. As questions continued swirling around King Charles's reported decisions, attention increasingly shifted toward the person standing at the center of the growing story. Catherine had spent much of her royal life doing something remarkably uncommon in an age of constant headlines and endless scrutiny. She waited. While others chased influence, defended positions, or became entangled in controversy, she focused on service. It was not the most dramatic path. It was not the fastest route to prominence. Yet according to many royal observers, it may have been the most effective. From the moment she entered royal life, Catherine faced enormous expectations. Every appearance was analyzed. Every decision was scrutinized. Every challenge became a test of character. Yet rather than attempting to reshape the institution around herself, she appeared determined to understand it first. Year after year, she gradually assumed responsibilities, learned traditions, and adapted to the demands that accompanied life within the monarchy. That long period of preparation rarely generated sensational headlines, but it quietly built something far more valuable: trust. According to palace insiders, trust has always been one of the monarchy's most important currencies. Titles can be granted, responsibilities can be assigned. Influence, however, is earned over time. It develops through reliability, discretion, and the ability to place duty above personal interests. Those who have observed Catherine's journey often point to those qualities as the foundation of her growing standing within royal circles. The respect she reportedly enjoys today was not achieved through a single decision. It was built through years of consistency. That is why comparisons with Queen Elizabeth have become increasingly common in recent discussions. While the two women come from different generations and faced different circumstances, commentators frequently note similarities in their approach to responsibility. Both are often described as individuals who understood the importance of stability. Both appeared willing to accept personal sacrifices in service of larger obligations. And both earned admiration not through dramatic gestures, but through persistence, discipline, and dedication to duty. As reports surrounding Catherine's expanded role continued to spread, many royal commentators began suggesting that she was being viewed in a new light. No longer was she discussed solely as the future queen consort. Increasingly, she was being described as a future guardian of royal traditions. That distinction mattered because guardianship implies stewardship rather than ownership. It reflects responsibility rather than privilege. And according to those following recent developments, that difference lies at the heart of why Charles may have placed such confidence in her. The reported estate responsibilities linked to Catherine have therefore taken on symbolic importance. Supporters argue that they should not be viewed as rewards or personal advantages. Instead, they represent a vote of confidence in her ability to protect something larger than herself. The focus, according to this perspective, is not authority, it is continuity. It is about ensuring that traditions, responsibilities, and long-term planning remain secure as the monarchy prepares for future generations. Public reaction appears to have reinforced that narrative. As media coverage expanded, support for Catherine remained notably strong. Many observers interpreted her growing role as evidence that years of quiet dedication were finally being recognized. Others viewed it as confirmation that the monarchy was investing in figures who could provide stability during uncertain times. Regardless of individual opinion, the broader trend was difficult to ignore. Catherine's reputation seemed to emerge from the controversy not weakened, but strengthened. Palace insiders frequently describe her approach using a single recurring theme: stewardship. According to those accounts, she is less concerned with authority than with responsibility, less focused on influence than on preparation. Whether entirely accurate or not, that perception has become an important part of how recent developments are being interpreted. It aligns closely with the broader narrative that Charles is attempting to prepare the institution for the future rather than simply manage the present. That future itself has become a central part of the conversation. Many commentators now portray the reported transition as part of a larger modernization effort designed to ensure that the monarchy remains relevant, stable, and effective in the decades ahead. If that interpretation is correct, then Catherine's expanding responsibilities are not merely about today. They are about tomorrow. They are about the kind of leadership that will eventually guide the institution through its next chapter. And as that chapter began taking shape, another question became increasingly impossible to ignore. Because every shift in responsibility inevitably changes the balance within the royal household. Every step forward for one figure can create uncertainty for another. While Catherine's position appeared to be strengthening, attention was already beginning to turn towards someone else whose place within the evolving structure seemed far less certain. But as Catherine embraced her growing responsibilities, attention turned toward what this meant for Camilla's place within the evolving royal hierarchy. Here is Section 7 following your exact hook, transition line, and continuous narrative flow. Sometimes the most powerful royal decisions are never announced from a balcony or recorded in a formal decree. Sometimes they are revealed through responsibility, access, and trust. And according to insiders, that realization may have been the hardest part for Camilla to accept. By this stage, the conversation inside royal circles had evolved far beyond questions about a state's administrative duties or routine palace adjustments. The deeper observers looked, the clearer one reality seemed to become. What was unfolding was not simply a transfer of responsibilities. It was a transfer of confidence. And within the monarchy, confidence often carries more power than any title ever could. Reports increasingly suggested that Queen Camilla had begun recognizing the true significance of Catherine's expanding role, and that realization may have altered the entire meaning of the controversy. For months, speculation had focused on what Catherine was gaining. Yet many royal watchers began arguing that the more important story involved what those gains represented. The responsibilities reportedly moving toward Catherine were significant, not because of the assets attached to them, but because of the trust required to oversee them. Trust cannot be inherited automatically. It cannot be created through ceremony alone. It develops through years of observation, experience, and judgment. According to those interpretations, Charles's reported decisions were sending a message that extended far beyond property management. That message increasingly appeared to center on influence. Royal commentators frequently noted that influence within the monarchy operates differently than many people assume. Public attention often focuses on titles, appearances, and official positions. Yet behind the scenes, influence is measured by access, consultation, and confidence. Who is invited into important discussions? Who is trusted with sensitive responsibilities? Who is being prepared for larger roles in the future? These questions often reveal more about the institution's direction than any formal announcement ever could. As reports surrounding Catherine continued to circulate, many observers interpreted them as a symbolic endorsement of the Wales household itself. In their view, Charles was not merely investing confidence in Catherine as an individual. He was demonstrating faith in the future leadership team represented by both William and Catherine. That distinction mattered because it connected every reported decision to a much larger narrative about succession, continuity, and the monarchy's next era. According to palace insiders, Charles's priorities increasingly appeared focused on long-term institutional stability rather than short-term political considerations. Such an approach would be consistent with the broader themes that had emerged throughout the controversy, preparation, continuity, stewardship. Each seemed connected to a vision of the monarchy that extended decades into the future rather than concentrating solely on present circumstances. Whether one agreed with that vision or not, its influence appeared to be shaping key decisions behind palace walls. As a result, discussions about Catherine's future role became increasingly prominent. Commentators began openly debating what kind of queen she might one day become. Supporters pointed to her patience, discipline, and public popularity. Others emphasized her apparent commitment to duty and stability. Regardless of individual opinions, the fact that such conversations were growing more frequent demonstrated how dramatically perceptions had changed. Catherine was no longer viewed simply as a future royal consort. She was increasingly being discussed as a central figure in the monarchy's long-term future. Meanwhile, palace dynamics reportedly continued evolving in ways that remained largely hidden from public view. Relationships adapted. Priorities shifted. New responsibilities emerged. Old assumptions were quietly reconsidered. Much of this process unfolded beyond public observation, leaving outside commentators to piece together fragments of information and speculation. Yet despite the uncertainty, a broader pattern appeared to be taking shape. Influence was gradually moving toward the generation expected to guide the institution through its next chapter. That perception alone was enough to intensify the significance of every reported development. For Camilla's supporters, the changes reportedly raised difficult questions about future influence and relevance. For Catherine's supporters, they appeared to validate years of patience and dedication. For neutral observers, they offered a fascinating glimpse into how the monarchy manages transition during periods of uncertainty. In every case, however, the same conclusion seemed unavoidable. The balance within the royal family was changing. And perhaps that was the most important revelation of all. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a public dispute, but a gradual shift in trust, responsibility, and confidence that seemed to reshape the institution from within. The controversy that had begun with whispers about estates and responsibilities had ultimately become a story about the future itself. A story about who would carry the monarchy forward and who would help define its next chapter. As that reality became increasingly difficult to ignore, attention naturally turned toward the larger purpose behind everything that had unfolded. Because if Charles's decisions were indeed part of a broader strategy, then the controversy was never really about individual personalities at all. It was about something far bigger, far more enduring, and far more consequential than any temporary palace disagreement. And that shift would ultimately reveal the deeper purpose behind Charles's controversial decision. What began as a whisper inside palace walls had transformed into one of the most talked-about royal developments of the year. Yet beneath the headlines, speculation, and palace intrigue was a much larger story, one about legacy, duty, and the future of the crown itself. As the controversy continued to generate debate, one truth became increasingly difficult to dismiss. The story had never been solely about estates, responsibilities, or shifting administrative roles. Those elements may have triggered the discussion, but they were not its true heart. At its core, this was a story about preparation. It was a story about how one generation begins handing responsibility to the next long before the formal transition arrives. And according to the reports that fueled months of speculation, King Charles's decision to place greater confidence in Catherine represented one of the clearest indications yet of how he believes the monarchy must evolve to survive. Throughout the unfolding drama, observers repeatedly returned to the same central development. Catherine had reportedly been entrusted with responsibilities carrying significant symbolic and institutional weight. Whether viewed as practical planning or strategic positioning, the message appeared unmistakable. Charles was investing confidence in a figure widely regarded as dependable, disciplined, and committed to the long-term interests of the monarchy. For supporters, that confidence reflected years of dedication finally being recognized. For critics, it raised questions about shifting influence within the royal household. Yet regardless of perspective, few could deny the significance of what was taking place. The shadow of Queen Elizabeth also remained impossible to ignore. Even after her passing, her influence appeared woven into every aspect of the discussion. Throughout her reign, she spent decades building a monarchy designed to endure periods of uncertainty. Stability, continuity, and duty were not simply ideals she admired. They were principles she lived by. Many royal commentators have suggested that the reported decisions involving Catherine reflect those same values. If that interpretation is correct, then the late queen's influence did not end with her reign. Instead, it continues shaping the institution through the people entrusted to carry her legacy forward. That legacy increasingly seems connected to Catherine's growing role within the monarchy. Over time, she has evolved from a newcomer learning royal traditions into one of the institution's most trusted figures. The transformation did not happen overnight. It was built through patience, consistency, and a willingness to place responsibility ahead of personal ambition. Those qualities became recurrent themes throughout the controversy. Again and again, observers pointed to them as explanations for why Catherine appeared to be receiving greater trust at such a pivotal moment in royal history. Many believe that is precisely why the reported decision carries such symbolic importance. It appears to represent more than confidence in one individual. It reflects preparation for an entirely new era. The monarchy has always depended upon careful transitions between generations. Every successful reign ultimately requires preparation for what comes next. By reportedly placing Catherine closer to important responsibilities now, Charles may be ensuring that future leadership is strengthened long before it becomes necessary. In that sense, the decision can be viewed not as a reaction to present circumstances, but as an investment in future stability. At the same time, Camilla's reported frustration highlighted a broader reality that extends far beyond any one royal figure. Change is rarely comfortable. Every transition creates uncertainty. Every redistribution of responsibility alters existing relationships. The reactions surrounding this controversy revealed just how emotionally charged those adjustments can become. What some interpreted as prudent planning, others reportedly viewed as a challenge to established influence. That tension became one of the defining themes of the story itself. Yet despite the speculation, another pattern emerged with increasing clarity. William and Catherine appeared to be moving steadily toward the center of the monarchy's future. Public discussions about succession, leadership, and long-term planning repeatedly returned to the same conclusion. They are widely viewed as the team most likely to guide the institution through its next chapter. Whether through public support, growing responsibilities, or reported confidence from senior figures, their importance within the royal structure seems to be expanding. And perhaps that is the ultimate significance of everything that has unfolded. The monarchy now appears to be entering a new chapter, defined not by sudden upheaval, but by gradual preparation. Trust is being placed carefully. Responsibilities are being distributed thoughtfully. Long-term stewardship is becoming increasingly important. The institution is adapting while attempting to preserve the traditions that have sustained it for generations. It is a delicate balance, one that requires patience, discipline, and vision. The whispers that began behind closed doors may never fully disappear. Questions will continue. Speculation will persist. New developments will undoubtedly emerge. But the broader lesson remains remarkably clear. Behind every royal controversy lies a deeper story about continuity, responsibility, and the enduring challenge of preparing for the future while protecting the past. Because in the House of Windsor, power is rarely measured by titles alone, and sometimes the quietest decision becomes the one that changes everything. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.